The truck coughed once before dying in front of the house. I sat there for a long moment, watching dust settle on the hood. The air smelled like rain and pine, and something older. My hands shook on the steering wheel. I hadn't been back to Maple Hollow in 5 years. Not since the night everything cracked open. The house looked smaller now, swallowed by weeds and time. Its paint peeled like dried skin. The porch sagged, every board whispering a warning. I opened the door and stepped out. Gravel crunched beneath my boots. My shadow stretched across the yard, thin and hesitant. Each step forward felt like trespassing. When I reached the first stair, the screen door creaked open. My mother stood there. She looked frail, her body folded into itself. The light behind her flickered, painting her in gold and fear. Her hand rose, trembling. "Don't, Lynn," she said. Her voice was soft, but sharp enough to cut. Her eyes darted to the porch, then back to me. I froze. 5 years of distance collapsed into one breath. Then another voice filled the doorway. Look who finally crawled back. It was him. Don KH3I. Bigger than memory, smaller than shame. His flannel shirt was stained with whiskey and sawdust. He smiled, a crack instead of kindness. "Come in," he said, though it sounded like a command. Dinner was waiting. We sat at the same table, under the same flickering bulb. The stew was thick, the silence thicker. The TV muttered news about the new park contract. "Big win for the town," the anchor said. KH3I smirked, puffing his chest. "That's hard work right there," he bragged. I stared at the bowl in front of me. The smell of beef and rust made my stomach twist. I heard myself speak before I meant to. "I saw the invoices," I said. "The lumber doesn't match the price." The words landed like stones on glass. My mother's spoon froze midair. KH3I turned slowly, his smile gone. "What did you just say?" His voice was low, dangerous. "The numbers," I whispered. "They're wrong." The slap came fast. My head snapped sideways. The world spun, the chair fell. My cheek burned, my ears rang. Silence roared louder than the hit. My mother's breath caught, a tiny broken sound. She didn't move. She never did. When it was over, I lay there staring at the ceiling. The light bulb hummed above me like a fly. I realized then I couldn't save her by staying. That night, she came to my room, eyes swollen, voice shaking. She pressed a small envelope into my hand. "Alara Porch easement," the writing read. "Go," she whispered. "Go before he wakes." I didn't pack. I didn't look back. The truck started on the third try. As I drove away, the house shrank in the mirror. But the porch remained, a dark mouth in the night. And her words followed me all the way down the road. "Don't step on that porch, Lynn, not ever." The road out of Riversend stretched like a scar across the dark. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stop. By dawn, the truck's engine wheezed like a dying animal. I left it behind at a gas station 3 towns away. For the first time, silence didn't scare me. It felt like breathing after years underwater. I took a bus to Greystone, the city no one cared to remember. It smelled of oil, coffee, and anonymity. Perfect. I rented a room above a restaurant that never closed. Every night, garlic and smoke drifted through the floorboards. It was lonely, but it was mine. Days blurred into work. I poured lattes for strangers with bright smiles and tired eyes. At night, I studied. Accounting first, then auditing, then forensic tracing. The numbers became a new language. Patterns, lies. Each formula, each spreadsheet taught me how to find the rot. And all the while, 2 images stayed in my phone. The invoice, the porch. I didn't know why I kept them, only that they watched me back. 3 years passed. I earned my certification. I built a name no one could tie to Riversend. Tran, financial analyst. Precise, efficient, invisible. But ghosts are patient. One night, I opened the envelope my mother gave me. The paper was thin, the ink faded. Elara Porch easement, it said again. I typed the words into a search bar. Easement, a legal right to use another's property. My pulse quickened. I found property records for 12 Maple Hollow. Filed 6 years ago. A narrow strip of land, 4 by 10 feet, belonged to my mother. The north corner of the porch. She had carved her name into his kingdom. She had given me a door. My eyes burned. She wasn't just afraid. She was planning. I stayed up all night, digging deeper. The document showed the same address listed on his business insurance. He declared the porch as a receiving area for materials. To save money on premiums. It was arrogance disguised as efficiency. That one line tied his house to every public contract he held. If the porch failed inspection, so would his company. And that porch was rotting. I smiled for the first time in years. The plan began to take shape in my mind. Not revenge. Correction. I traced his network of shell companies. Money moved like shadows between them. Banner and Sons, River Ridge Holdings, Blue Elm Logistics. All one man. All the same greed. I opened my own company. Elara Holdings. A clean name, born from her handwriting. Through a broker, I bought his unpaid debts, buried deep in bank files. He would never know. The man who built everything on stolen wood would soon owe it all to me. I closed my laptop as dawn broke. Outside, the city hummed like a living machine. I felt her voice in the quiet. Not a whisper this time. A promise. The porch wasn't a curse. It was an invitation. 5 years after I ran, I was no longer the girl who fled. Greystone had hardened me into something colder, sharper. At Northline Financial, I was known for precision. People said I could smell fraud through a firewall. They weren't wrong. Every case I touched felt like a rehearsal for one man. Don K.H. letter 1EA3I. Each false invoice I uncovered mirrored his lies. Each number I corrected felt like revenge in decimals. The files of his company were public. Banner and Sons Construction. But the Sons didn't exist. He had built an empire out of fake names and cheap timber. I tracked his contracts, his suppliers, his shadow companies. Money bled from one shell to another, vanishing into noise. I built a web on my wall with red thread and pins. In the center sat the name, KH letter 1EA3I. Every line led back to him. Then I found the weakness. Jade Harbor Investments, his final shell company. It had defaulted on a bank loan 2 years ago. The debt was sold to a collection firm for pennies. That was my opening. Through Elara Holdings, I purchased the bad debt. I used a Delaware registration, hidden behind corporate layers. The transaction was legal, invisible, and perfect. By morning, KH letter 1EA3 I owed money to a company he didn't know I owned. I sat there staring at the document, feeling the power shift. It wasn't about dollars. It was about control. The porch had been his fortress. Now it was mine. I began to prepare the rest of the plan. Every move had to be quiet, lawful, and absolute. I requested a certified copy of the Elara easement deed. It arrived 2 weeks later, embossed with the county seal. I memorized every clause. Ingress and egress rights, 10 feet by 4. Legal access to the northern porch corner. My mother's signature sat beside his. Her quiet rebellion immortalized in ink. I stared at her handwriting until my eyes blurred. She had given me the weapon before I knew I'd need it. I set up surveillance next. A discreet doorbell camera, motion sensors under the boards. A local technician installed them while he was away. The footage streamed to my encrypted cloud. When I opened the feed, The porch filled my screen. Silent, waiting. Every warped plank gleamed under the porch light. For years, I dreamed of burning it down. Now I would bury him with it instead. I studied his insurance files. There it was, one line that doomed him. Receiving Lane for material deliveries at 12 Maple Hollow. To save a few $100s, he had tied his home to his company. If the porch failed safety inspection, the contract failed too. I drafted an anonymous complaint to the county office. Unsafe commercial structure posing risk to workers. It was logged within minutes. A case number appeared on my screen. K734B. The first domino had fallen. When I closed my laptop, the night outside was silent. Somewhere far away, he was still laughing. He didn't know that the wood under his boots had already begun to rot. I drove back into Riversend as the sun sagged toward evening. The town looked the same. Time had only dusted the edges. I parked 2 houses down and watched. A small black dot appeared next to the front door. The doorbell camera I had paid for went up 3 days earlier. A local technician installed it while Kai was at a job. He never noticed new things that didn't feed his pride. My phone buzzed with the live feed. The porch filled the screen in soft amber light. I walked to the house with a steady, quiet step. Kai stood framed in the doorway like he owned the horizon. He smiled the old practiced smile. It never reached his eyes. He smelled of whiskey and cheap glue. Back to make amends, he joked. I smiled back and unfolded my portfolio. I handed him a formal letter on company letterhead. He took it and crumpled it without reading. I told him it was a routine audit request. He shoved the paper into his pocket. My mother came out with 2 glasses of iced tea. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were steady. She walked past Kai as if she had rights here. She did. I stood at the edge of the gravel and spoke softly. I can't step on the porch, Kai. I don't have the right. He laughed at the line, then his face changed. Confusion flickered, and then sharpened into anger. I opened my portfolio and placed a laminated photo on his palm. It showed an invoice and the county inspection log side by side. The lot numbers matched. His breath left him in a small, stunned noise. He looked past me toward the porch. The camera blinked. A notification arrived on my phone. Seismic sensor triggered. Someone was moving the boards. He had taken the bait. I walked to my car slowly, as if I belonged there. He vanished inside without a word. The light on the porch hummed. My mother watched him go like a woman who had rehearsed this moment for years. I sat in the car and kept the feed open. Kai climbed down into the hatch when the men left. He hauled a canvas duffel onto the porch. He counted money with shaking hands. He wrote entries into a ledger under a lamplight. Every second was recorded and time stamped. I downloaded the clip to 3 secure drives immediately. It was gold. But the plan was not finished. Kai panicked and made a public show of repair. He planted a sign about porch restoration to cover the work. The town paper ran a feel-good piece the next morning. He called it charity. He called it redemption. I made a small donation online under a trust I created. It was $50 and a legal foothold. That donation made me a stakeholder in the project. It gave me standing to demand oversight. When the crew peeled back the rotten boards, I watched from an encrypted feed. They exposed the steel hatch exactly where I remembered it. They pried it open clumsily and left it bare. They did not know they were performing for me. Kai returned at dusk to inventory the stash. He spoke aloud as he counted, unaware he was broadcasting a confession. I called the county inspector as an agent of concern. I identified myself as a donor worried for worker safety. He arrived within hours. The inspector walked the exposed frame with a clipboard. He poked rotten joists and scribbled notes. He saw the hatch and the unsafe modifications. He cited multiple violations on the spot. A single phone call from his truck triggered the stop work order. Kai's crew packed in silence. They took down the staged sign and left 2 holes in the lawn behind. Rumors sprinted through Riversend like fire. Neighbors whispered while standing by their fences. I watched and felt the weight in my chest ease. The porch was still the center of gravity here. It had always been. Only now others could see the rot under the planks. I saved every clip and log with care. Each file was another piece of the case I would build. And every time I replayed the footage, I heard my mother's voice telling me to go. I had gone, and what I carried home was not vengeance but evidence. The hearing room smelled of old carpet and stale coffee. Fluorescent lights hummed above our heads. 3 county commissioners sat behind a long wooden desk. Their faces were carved with boredom and duty. Kai sat across the aisle, red-faced and sweating. A lawyer from Greystone whispered in his ear. I sat alone with my folder, calm and ready. This was not home. This was a battlefield made of paper. The chairman cleared his throat and called the meeting to order. We are here to review the suspension of Banner and Sons construction. I stood. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My voice echoed slightly in the cold room. I began with the simplest truth. The invoices. The lot numbers. The mismatched grades of lumber. Each slide projected on the screen like a wound reopening. The gallery murmured. Kai stared at the evidence as if it had betrayed him. Then I moved to the next layer. The porch. I read aloud from his own insurance policy. Designated receiving lane for material deliveries, 12 Maple Hollow. That one line turned his private home into a commercial space. It subjected him to every safety code he ignored. The video came next. I pressed play. The screen flickered to life. Kai's face appeared under the porch light. He was counting stacks of cash, scribbling notes into a ledger. The words, park overages, were visible at the top of the page. Someone gasped in the audience. The lawyer shifted in his seat, pretending calm. Kai froze, his eyes darting toward me. I paused the video on the frame of him holding the money. This, I said, is your designated receiving lane in use. No one spoke for a long moment. The chairman leaned forward. Do you have more, Ms. Tran? Yes, I said softly. Appendix D, Section 14, Subsection B. I read it aloud. Any documented safety violation at a related business facility constitutes material breach. The county's contract language was clear and merciless. If one nail was wrong, the entire project fell. The lawyer stood quickly. Mr. Chairman, this is a family vendetta, he said. My client's stepdaughter has twisted this into fiction. He looked at me like I was a ghost come to haunt him. I didn't look back. I spoke only to the commissioners. My relation to Mr. Kai does not alter the math. The data is verifiable. The violations are documented. The contract speaks for itself. Silence filled the room like water. Then a man in a gray suit stood from the back. I'm with Mid-Atlantic Surety Insurance, he said. In light of these findings, we are withdrawing coverage immediately. The chairman nodded heavily. He turned to the clerk. Record the decision, he said. Contract suspended. Penalty assessed at $500,000. Kai's lawyer tried to protest, but the sound drowned under the gavel. It was done. The empire collapsed in the most official way possible. No shouting. No blood. Just signatures and silence. Kai stared at the table, his mouth open, words gone. I gathered my papers and stood. As I walked out, the doors shut behind me like the final stamp of a verdict. Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain and freedom. I looked toward the horizon, and for the first time I did not feel small. The porch had broken him. The law had saved me. The town never forgot how he fell. Whispers moved faster than truth. People spoke his name in grocery lines and church pews. Banner and Sons became a cautionary tale. Kai hid in the house for weeks. The porch he worshipped was now a condemned structure. Yellow tape fluttered like mocking ribbons. I didn't celebrate. Victory felt like ash in my mouth. I drove past 12 Maple Hollow one evening. The windows were dark. The grass had grown high and wild. For the first time, I didn't feel afraid. I parked on the roadside and watched the porch. Every nail and crack still knew my name. The camera was gone, but I remembered every frame. My mother's car wasn't there. She had left quietly, without telling me. The neighbors said she moved to the coast. A small apartment by the sea, far from him. I found her a week later. She looked lighter, almost transparent. We sat by the water and said nothing. She reached for my hand and held it long. "You didn't step on it, did you?" she asked. I smiled. "No, Mom, I never did." Her eyes glistened, a mix of pride and grief. We watched the horizon turn orange and fade. The tide erased our footprints every few minutes. It felt right. When she slept that night, I walked outside. The ocean smelled like forgiveness. For years, I had built myself on anger. Now there was only quiet. I realized the porch had never been the curse. It was the proof that truth endures longer than fear. Kai's trial came months later. The evidence was airtight. Fraud, tax evasion, falsified documents. He signed a plea deal, traded his empire for silence. I didn't attend the sentencing. I didn't need to see him broken. The papers said he'd lost everything. His house sold at auction for less than its debts. The porch was demolished 2 weeks after. The ground beneath it revealed the safe. Empty. He had taken the money somewhere I didn't care to find. Greed always finds another hole to hide in. I visited the site once before leaving town. The yard was bare. No boards, no nails. Just a square of clean earth. I knelt and pressed my palm against the dirt. It was cool and firm. I whispered goodbye to the ghosts beneath. Then I turned away. On the drive back to Greystone, the sky broke open with rain. Each drop hit the windshield like a heartbeat. The road shimmered ahead, endless and forgiving. I thought of my mother's courage, of how she carved a doorway in law when she couldn't fight in life. She had given me the language of justice without ever nomming it. I whispered her words to myself one last time. Don't step on the porch. Not because of fear. Because some places are meant to hold memory, not footsteps. And as the rain washed the road clean, I finally felt free. The house is gone now. Only the outline of its foundation remains beneath the grass. People walk past it without knowing what stood there. They don't see the ghosts buried under the soil. But I do. Every time I close my eyes, I see the porch. The L letter 1ED7, I trong LU letter 1ED3, NG tin, NH letter 1EFN, TH letter 1ED, L letter 1EA1.